Yeah, and I'm going to let JC expand on the technical side, but to Seth's point, water is a massive resource here. We do have desalination plants, so we do have municipal water, but it's limited and it's very expensive. Traditional farming uses a lot of water. When you need to water crops in soil under high heat and intense sunlight that we constantly have, you need a tremendous amount of water to produce a soil-based crop. One of the reasons that we're focused 100% on hydroponics is on, notwithstanding the name, we actually use very little water comparatively. We're using about 10% of the water that soil-based farming uses, so it's extremely water efficient. And then within the production system, we have other technologies that recycles and reuses water. So even the initial supply is limited. And JC, why don't you explain exactly how the water system works, how we use storage, recycling, filtering, and get the most out of the water resource that we need.
So we will usually receive water from the municipality at first for each one of these projects until the revenues can warrant us purchasing some systems that, for example, harvest water out of the air, which are a little bit more expensive. But most importantly is that a lot of these islands get plenty of rain. And that is very, very high quality water to work with. It's practically distilled. And so your greenhouses have a large surface area on the roof, and it's very easy to use that as a water catchment system. So we plan our projects to have extra reservoirs to catch and store that water that we can use. And as Ralph just mentioned, when we are using it, we don't really lose a drop. We've engineered a production system inside the greenhouse that is not only insulated so that we can use a lot less energy to actually cool the crop. We don't cool the air because the air is constantly leaving the greenhouse. That would be wasted energy. We cool the water and make sure that the root area is actually sealed and insulated, and whatever is not physically used by the plants for growth goes back to the tank to be used again. And even when it is considered spent, in other words, the fertilizer solution is not perfect anymore, then we release it to be used for people's soil agriculture plots. And I like what Seth was saying about building buildings and residential properties with that strategy in mind. Definitely plan on catching the rainwater when it comes. Definitely plan on having a use for it. Setting up gardens in your backyard, for example, like Ralph was describing, with plants that can easily be permaculture. That means low maintenance, low inputs, no pesticides, just the things that grow well there, so that you can reduce your grocery bill, maximize your purchasing power, and let the farmers take care of the things that are a little bit more intensive.
And Ralph, you were talking about the type of crops, so greens, cabbages, things like that. Are they successfully grown in your greenhouse structure? So what I'm asking, if you had a farmer who wanted to grow, let's say, foods that weren't native to the islands that they reside in, using your system, could they be quite innovative and grow different things like, I don't know, blueberries, gooseberries, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're a farming company. So we develop the technology to support our own farms. We build, own, and operate farms, greenhouse farms. And we currently have 3 projects underway right now, with several others coming up this year. We're getting obviously a lot of focus, but you know, the technology around this is all designed specifically for, I was going to say the Caribbean, but it's really for all island locations in the world that are under constant threat from typhoons and hurricanes, and heavily food import dependent. Where those two meet, that is where our value proposition is, and it's quite unique, because of this engineering behind it. So, you know, when we do our farms, so we're working directly with, you know, supermarkets, wholesalers, resort buyers who are, you know, looking to divert their imported supply into a locally grown supply of food. We really, you know, the only competition we have is imported food costs and landed food costs. Like, what I found unbelievable as we started unrolling these projects is that even though they grow very little in these islands, the government still charge import duties on fresh food, right? So the landed cost of a pound of organic spinach imported from the U.S. here in Anguilla, that 1 pound bag of organic imported spinach is selling for $26. $26 a pound for a bag of spinach, right? So, going back to your question, though, you know, we see the opportunity of bringing in our technologies to fill the gaps, as we said, to bring young men and women back into farming, right? You know, the issue here is we have, you know, we have an aging farmer population. You know, the average age of the farmer now in the Caribbean is probably about 58 years old. Their children and their children's children just aren't interested in toiling in the sun anymore and working on a farm, and you know, but they love tech, right? So getting them to come into a laboratory environment, right, working and training them on advanced hydroponic systems in a clean environment, is very cool for them. So we've had a tremendous amount of interest from young people to come and work in our farms. So underneath all of that, there's this, as you mentioned, Natasha, you know, people love farming down here. Everybody has been involved in farming. Their families are all involved in farming. We're trying to create a new environment for them to work in, to train them, and to certify them on systems that are transferable. So, you know, to your point on the brain drain, we want them to come and work in our farms to learn, and not have to leave the country. But it will give them something where they can work anywhere in the world, because, you know, protected agriculture is one of the biggest growing businesses everywhere in the world right now. But it creates opportunities for these people. And ultimately, we want to see them open up their own farm and open up their own greenhouse farm, because there's no way that our company alone could grow everything that is needed down here, right? So we're inviting and opening it up to everybody that wants to get involved and, you know, take a certain crop and grow it and become an expert in that crop in your greenhouse, you know, and we'll do the rest. There's plenty to go around.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking, Ralph, and Seth and JC, is for me, it's that metaphysical element. It's actually reconnecting with the land, falling back in love with your country, your land, reinvesting your energy, seeing it in a new light. Because in my point of view, technology is great, but you can't eat technology. That people do have to. We need farmers. Right. It's a master skill. As JC is a master grower, and my mum would be in love with JC because, you know, she's connected to the land. And so to have those skills of being able to put your hands in the dirt, reconnect with the soil, not only is it a physical thing, but it's a spiritual, cultural. It's cultural messages that you pass down. These are things that are innate, that you just pass down to your family and share with the community. So for me, what you're saying is over and above. It's really kind of developing the island in many different spheres.
When it comes to older folks who are in love with farming, you have to remember farming is has a short lifespan, like sports. It's very physical. And I've been involved in such agriculture where, you know, you're out in nature, battling every part of nature, usually with poisons, and you're on your knees, bending your back, and there's nothing wrong with that. And people take a lot of pride in it. But you can't do that into your 50s and 60s. So I've seen a lot of people in sheer utter disappointment kind of abandon that whole thing and have nothing to do. So when I tell them, you can keep doing what you're doing, you'll be in the shade, out of the strong wind, standing up straight, working at hip height, and you never have to bend over again or dig in the dirt unless you feel like it, they love that. And on the flip side, like he was mentioning, the youth say, I don't want a blue collar job. I don't want to get dirty. I don't want anything demeaning. I don't want anything brainless. And I love technology. Say, well, guess what? The way we're doing this now is very different than your father's farm. The same outcome is, you know, you're still producing food for people, and that feels very, very good. But there's interesting little gadgets and sensors everywhere, and you're on a computer analyzing your data, and you can look at the camera from the phone, and there's something for everybody there. And just a brief summary of what this is all about. The greenhouse cover keeps the rain off the plants because that can be damaging. The walls keep the extreme wind off the plants because that can be damaging. The materials we are using specifically don't need to be replaced every couple of years and you take a bunch of plastic and throw it away. We want them to be sustainable, permanent. And the system we're using tricks cold weather plants into thinking it's cooler than it is, and they grow beautifully. So we're overcoming the boundaries, basically, the hurdles to growing some of the things that many people have tried outside and failed. And yeah, I did mention the shading systems. We deploy shades that reduce the amount of light by exactly as much as you need. So it actually feels cool. You're working in partial shade, and it's a good experience. I've witnessed some people who had never farmed anything before fall in love with this, and also people who have farmed traditionally before fall in love with this, and kids who have never done anything before fall in love with this. It's very attractive and speaks for itself.
And I guess it gives people a sense of personal victory because they can actually put in the effort and see their produce. So it's kind of joined up thinking.